I am often asked, "Hey Ramsey, do I belong to a McDojo?" People send me comments and questions constantly, relating some sort of questionable, iffy experience they had with their martial arts school or their coach, and they want to know, is this place legit? I think what a lot of us need to ask, even more than is it a McDojo, is this: is my school a martial arts cult? Is my coach a martial arts cult leader? Am I a cult member? Cults, in the simplest way I can possibly think to describe them, is the dictionary definition: a group of people dedicated to the veneration of a person, an object, or an ideology. Usually a person, a charismatic cult leader, if you will. The word is usually thrown out there pejoratively to basically mean it's bad. That's a fancy $5 college word for bad. And you should feel bad for it too, they seem to say when they say you belong to a cult. So please do not feel offended. Or maybe do if I say your martial arts school is a cult. Your coach is a cult leader, and you belong to a cult. When I lived in South America, and I was learning Spanish from native Spanish speakers, through speaking with them, I was surprised to learn how they use the word cult in Argentina. Because in English, it's always with a pejorative context. You belong to a cult. You are bad, and you should feel bad for it, is the idea. But in South America, a cult is just a religious group. For example, the Catholic cult, the Mormon cult, the Protestant cult, the Buddhist cult. Whatever group of people for whatever religion is a cult. And that's not bad or good, it's just the word for a religious group. In Spanish, culto. Este domingo vamos al culto, vamos a nuestro culto. Y vos vas a tu culto. Just means, we're going to our church, you're going to yours. And that's it. But again, in English, it's got that negative context. So, do you belong to a martial arts cult? What is a cult? Again, it's a group that venerates a person, usually, or an ideology, and sometimes an object. So what's the difference between a cult and a religion in English? You might say all religions are cults. Well, in the classical sense of the word, yeah, but because of semantic drift, and if you don't know what that is, that's when words or phrases change meaning over time. For example, if right now in the year 2020, I come out to a group of people and I say, hey, I'm gay, that means a very, very different thing than it meant in the year 1920, where it meant I'm happy, I'm feeling kind of frivolous and fancy-free. But today, not so much because of semantic drift. Words change meaning. That's the case with the word cult. So what is the difference in the modern English language between a cult and a religion? Well, here's what it is, and it's pretty simple. A cult, like I said, is a group of people that venerates a person. It's about the person. It's about that central object. It's not about the worshippers. It's about the worshipped. It's not about lifting you up. It's not about changing you. It's about exalting the worshipped. Okay? So if you have a cult of personality, you have, let's say there's a guy named Steve, and Steve runs a martial arts school. And let's say Steve is really good at teaching martial arts. He's a good fighter. He's competent at his chosen profession. And he has a bunch of students. But let's say Steve is a cult leader, and he runs a martial arts cult, not a McDojo. Notice he's a good teacher. He knows how to teach martial arts. He knows how to fight. He knows all this good stuff. But why is Steve's gym a cult? Well, because Steve's gym is not about you. It's not about making you a better fighter, a better student, a better person. It's about making Steve feel good about Steve. Have you ever met Steve in real life? Have you ever been to Steve's gym in real life? Again, that's just a hypothetical name. But there are plenty of Steves out there. And it's the same thing with the church. There's a section in the New Testament where we kind of get a story illustrating this point, but the difference between a cult and a church. The apostles of Christ, a couple of them, are arrested. This is after the crucifixion of Christ. They killed Jesus. They thought, okay, he's dead, so Christianity is done. That's what the crucifiers thought, if you will. And they thought, all right, if we get rid of these apostles, those pesky Christians that keep preaching this Jesus, then we'll get rid of the movement. And so they bring the apostles before the judge, before the tribunal. And they're like, what should we do with these guys? Let's kill them. Let's get rid of them somehow. And one of these fellows, a guy named Gamaliel, he stands up and he says, wait a minute. You know, we've dealt with cults before. The cult of this guy and the cult of that guy and the cult of the other guy. There was even another guy he mentioned who was named Jesus, not Jesus of Nazareth, not Jesus Christ, another Jesus who had a cult after him. And he said, you know, as soon as those guys were gone, their cults died off with them. So, you know what? Who are we to step in and say, let's execute these guys or whatever? If it's a cult, the movement's going to die out no matter what. It's doomed to failure. You know, when the cult leader is gone, it's doomed. But if it's a religion, if it's God's religion, if God is behind it, there's nothing we can do about it. We could do whatever to these guys, and you know what? We're just fighting against God. So, let the cults take care of themselves, is basically what Gamaliel said. That's a paraphrase. Interesting story, but it illustrates the point. But cults can be quite powerful. Brazilian jiu-jitsu has a lot of cults built up around it. Most martial arts that have staying power and lots of different gyms throughout the world have cults. I have definitely visited some Brazilian jiu-jitsu cults. What makes it a Brazilian jiu-jitsu cult? Well, because it's not so much about teaching Brazilian jiu-jitsu. It's not so much about, you know, those students who come in and want to improve themselves and be better grapplers and better martial artists and better people. It's about, you know, that guy wearing the black belt in the middle who wants people to worship him. He wants veneration. He wants your respect. He wants you to exalt him and lift him up. And in those sorts of schools, if that guy's gone, the gym dies. Whereas if you look at the martial art as a whole, you know, Helio Gracie, however you want to pronounce that name, he's dead, but his movement continues. Because the movement that he started was essentially a martial arts religion rather than a martial arts cult, if you will. And by religion, I mean a movement of action. I'm not using that term pejoratively, religion. Religion is not what you believe, it is what you do. So if I say I am a Christian, and then I act contrary to the teachings of Christ, then my religion is not Christianity. But if I say nothing, and my actions are conducive with the teachings of Christ, then regardless of what I say, I believe. That is Christian behavior. That is the Christian religion. Does that make sense? And you could probably say the same thing for other things. I've had people say, Ramsey, you're a great Buddhist. And I'm not a Buddhist, not technically anyway. I've read the teachings of the Buddha. And I've talked to some Buddhist friends who are like, you get it, man. You get it. Like, okay, well, I don't like go to Buddhist temples and burn incense or whatever. I don't understand that. They're like, no. You get it. Okay. Because as far as their understanding of the religion, it's about what you do more than what you say you believe. I get that. I respect that. Now, do you know any martial arts cult leaders? Some of them are dangerous. Some of them are harmless. Yeah, there are harmless cults out there. When we say cults, we usually think about the dangerous cult leaders that get everybody to drink poisonous Kool-Aid and kill themselves. And sometimes cults are fairly harmless, like a bunch of people who get together and try to make fire come down from heaven, and then it doesn't happen. And then they get together again and they try to believe so hard that the fire comes down from heaven, and it doesn't happen. They're like, well, we just need to believe harder. And maybe they waste their own time, but ultimately, mostly harmless. Martial arts, on the other hand, has the potential to be extremely harmful. Why? Because we are teaching combative techniques. Combative techniques you can literally use to kill people. In Brazilian jiu-jitsu, what is that? It's a method of breaking limbs, tearing up joints, strangling people to death, breaking necks, doing serious damage, or dealing death. We can dress it up as keeping it friendly and all that, but ultimately, that's what it is. It's a martial art of dealing death efficiently, quickly, or slowly and painfully if you're a bit of a sadist. So where's the danger there? If suddenly one of those groups turns into a cult, turns away from the ideology of, hey, let's build each other up, learn something positive from this experience, learn how to become essentially warriors in a garden rather than gardeners in a war, learn to be meek, people who have the capacity for violence but choose to use that capacity for violence with wisdom and stewardship. They choose not to. We turn away from that, and instead, it's about inflating the ego of a madman who doesn't even know he's a madman. That's dangerous. So check yourself, especially if you are a martial arts instructor, because you are in a position of authority, a position of power, and it is extremely easy to abuse that power. It is. All you have to do is take one step in the wrong direction. All you have to do is worry a little too much about number one, yourself, and a little less about the other guy. That's dangerous. That kind of thinking can get people killed. So, do you belong to a McDojo? If you have to ask that question, you probably do. Do you belong to a martial arts cult? Oh, man. I'm a major outspoken opponent of belt systems. Why? Because it's a fealty system. It's a pyramid scheme. It's all going back up to the cult leader. It's political in nature, very much so. Yeah, I know they're not all like that, but it has the potential to be abused like that, and it is often abused like that. And I'm sure there are many people who have great respect for their coaches and teachers and have had a positive experience earning their belt. And that's great. If so, tell me your story down below. I'd love to hear that. I've had experiences like that too. And at the same time, I have had and I have seen firsthand and heard secondhand so many experiences of what should be a fun, a neat, a noble experience of rewarding somebody's work with a symbol, a belt, having that twisted into something evil. You do what I say, and you get the little carrot. You get the belt, but you gotta bow down, basically. You gotta worship the cult leader. That's no good. Check yourselves, my friends. That's all I have to say. Martial arts cults, bad, and you should feel bad if you're starting one. Thanks for watching. Now get out there and train.